Good morning. This is Kari Barron. So happy to talk to you today.
I want people to get to know you too during
Yeah.
all of this stuff too. Or that you have your the sweet spot in your heart for. What is
Yeah.
your modality?
Yeah, my sweet spot is really working on fixing the cell because we have 10 trillion of them, and if they don't work, we don't work. So that's kind of my sweet spot. I studied functional medicine. I took a fast track course. So I graduated from nursing as a nurse practitioner. I was a nurse for 20 years when I went back to school and graduated from NP school in the pandemic, like August of 2020.
Oh,
They shut everything down. I was really worried I wasn't going to get to graduate. It was really kind of like, they opened everything up for us students because they decided we were essential. But I was working in the hospital. But I was working in a specialty department. So I only worked 1 week a month, which gave me lots of time to be at home. And so I studied functional medicine on a fast track course for 90 days. And it was like drinking from a fire hose.
oh, I
And
can
then
imagine.
yeah,
How did that feel coming from nursing to looking at functional and
it was
going through all
always
of
what
that?
I wanted to do. So I'm a crunchy mom. Like I was home birthing and doing homeopathy in the 80s when everybody thought you were crazy. And I raised my kids to be vegetarian and we did homeopathy and herbs and we never hardly ever used traditional medicine ever. And so I had always, that is how I overcame hyperemesis. So I threw up for 9 months when I was pregnant. I lost 25 pounds. And so that's how I overcame that. And that was my first pregnancy. And that's how I successfully had 4 more pregnancies without too many issues. And so I was
Wow.
always living that. And I actually became a nurse because I heard the Lord, when I was on a mission trip, heard the Lord say, go home and become a nurse. I want you to do medical missions. And so I did that. And I thought I was going to be a midwife because I loved home delivery and I loved helping friends have their babies. But then I went to a code, which was like we helped to resuscitate somebody. And I was like, oh, I really love that. The adrenaline rush was a lot. So that's what I went into was ICU and then I eventually emergency. And I did that
But
mostly.
you like people dying on you.
Or a lot of people living. I saved a lot of people's lives. I actually did. We helped to save a lot of people's lives. A lot more lived than died. And
I actually had a funky situation. I was telling you about the energy techniques.
yeah,
We were at someone's house, and a couple friend of ours that is in Barcelona was giving kind of their testimony about how they were on their mission field because they minister to ministers. So like
yeah,
they're a
that's what
hub,
my ministry is. Yeah,
they're a hub for people to come to. And
yes.
um
You have to tell
it
me who that is later, because that's what I did with ministry in
that's
my,
awesome.
yeah.
So she's sitting there and all of a sudden she's like, and there was a nurse in the room and she goes, what are you experiencing? She was so calm. And I just was looking at her like, what's going on? And she goes, my heart's racing. And I had watched a VHS tape of TKM, which is the King method. It's a hands-on technique to help people with energy flow. And in that video, and I watched it maybe 2, 3 weeks earlier out of curiosity. I wasn't trying to study it or anything, but you can use your hands to stop a heart attack.
Yeah.
And I felt like the Lord was saying, you need to go help her. And I sat there and I'm in my head going, I don't know what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
I know. And then again, he said, you need to go help her. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to look like a fool. And he said it again. I'm like, okay, I don't want to be dead instantly, so I better go help her. So all I did was like, can you sit on the floor? Because she was sitting on the hearth of the fireplace. I said, can you sit on the floor? The nurse was right there. And I go, do you mind if I put my hand on your back and hold your other hand? And she's like, what? And I go, do you mind if I do this? She's like, no, do whatever. And she's like totally panicking at that point. So I put my right hand in the location where I'm thinking it might be. Like I had no clue where I needed to put it, and I touched her left pinky. The instant I touched her left pinky, I felt like I had been plugged into an outlet and I had a surge of electricity that I felt go from my right hand to my left. You
Wow.
don't normally feel that with electricity that it
Yeah.
moves through your body, but I think God did that for intentionally. And I
Yeah.
turned to her like, did you feel that? And she's like, what? She had no clue, no clue.
Wow.
So I held that position, and you're supposed to hold the position until the pulses, because you'll feel different feelings
Sure.
in your fingers, match. And I'm sitting there and I'm praying. I'm like, Lord, help me not hurt her. Don't let me look like a fool. Because I was so concerned about how I looked. And then afterwards, I'm like, wow, that was a lesson that, I
Wow.
don't need to be concerned about how I look. I need to be concerned about what my calling is.
Sure.
So I'm sitting there and holding her finger, and I'm noticing that the rhythms were coming back into sync.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I'm like, they're the same intensity, they're the same rate. Oh my gosh, what is this thing that I accidentally learned? And I'm holding it. And I thought, I don't know how long I'm supposed to hold it. I'm like, do I have to wait for a while? And I'm like, are you okay? And I looked at her and she goes, yeah, it's okay now. And I was like, oh,
That's
like
amazing.
that that just blew my mind. And I wish that people knew those techniques. And so I ended up getting trained as a certified instructor with TCAM to help people with that. But can you imagine the impact that would have
Yeah.
been if you could have done those things
Yeah.
in the ER room when
Yeah.
it came to stuff? I just talking at the pool 2 days ago, I met a new friend. I'm meeting new people here because I don't know anybody but my husband and my son. And I'm like talking about the anaphylaxis one. And there are so many ways in emergencies that you can help in a different way. So that, sorry to interrupt, but that was
No,
one of the
that's
things that was
amazing. I want to learn how to
powerful.
do that. Oh, that's so cool. Because I
It was,
definitely am very sensitive to energy movement. So I would love to learn that.
oh, that surge, because basically what you're doing is you are being a jumper cable
Yeah.
to unclog their
Yeah.
energy. So once that congestion breaks through, the energy has ability to flow through, and it's stronger because it's got all this push from behind.
Sure.
So it blew my mind. And
That's amazing.
afterwards, I was able to talk to Suzanne about it. And she goes, oh, I totally want to learn that kind of stuff. And she's a nice person, but she doesn't follow through on things.
Yeah.
And being in Barcelona, me being in at that time in California, it just
Sure.
never
Yeah. Yeah.
came to being. But when you can help someone in an emergency situation, or when they are at their last whatever, it's so powerful and such a blessing to do that. And that was a lesson that I learned in faith as well. It's like, God's calling me to do something, I better damn well do it,
Yeah.
or there's going to be a loss that I felt, because that was such a blessing to do that. I would miss out on that ability to share God with her.
Yeah.
If she'd had to go to the medical route and have EMT come or whatever, as I was sitting there, they're like, do you want us to call 911? She goes, no, 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 no. She wanted to wait a little bit. And I'm glad that she did, because it gave me opportunity to try that. But it's, God will put us in circumstances that we learn the most bizarre things that are so useful.
Yeah. No, I loved what I did. I had lots of opportunity to sit and help people in their last moments because we didn't have everybody. We didn't save everybody.
And you
And a
can't,
lot of
that's
what I
not your
did was
job.
yeah. And a lot of what I did too was not just helping the patient. Sometimes it was being with the family and
Yeah.
helping them in that moment of grief. And I was actually really good at it. It's just that,
Imagine that.
yeah, the end of life care
No,
was
I could
really,
totally see how you would just be such a blessing to someone going through trauma. Absolutely.
yeah, it was really, it was beautiful. And I did feel like I was definitely very fulfilling. The days, I mean, some days were longer than others and harder than others when everybody was trying to die all at the same time. That wasn't always fun, especially when there wasn't enough of us to go around. But it was more times than not. It was really fulfilling and just a privilege. But I say all that to say all the while, what I knew that I could do that because I knew Western medicine shines in acute situations. It's
Absolutely.
great at saving lives. And, like I tell people, if I come in with a broken leg, you can give me comfrey because it's bone set, but you better put a cast on my leg. Or if I need surgery, you better or whatever I need in a trauma, in
Yeah.
that kind of a situation. that's when Western medicine shines. But
Absolutely.
in preventative medicine and chronic disease medicine practice and everything, that's where the functional looking for the root. So functional medicine is root cause. Why
Yep.
are people doing why is their body doing what it's doing? Why are they feeling the way it's feeling? What's causing it? Uncovering all that, and I call it being a super sleuth, where we have to like go looking for all the clues and undercover lifting up all the rocks and stuff. And so all the while I was doing traditional, I was still living more of a holistic life. And when I tried, as I mentioned earlier, when I tried the Western route, it failed me miserably because I was like, I'm doing what I think and what it ended up being, the very first thing that it ended up being is thought I was eating well. I was eating vegetarian. I was eating whole foods and stuff like that. But there were it was for me, removing certain foods was like the biggest thing. Like that started me going, oh, okay, so this wasn't good for me.
Yeah.
This didn't serve me. And then realizing I'd had mono that had a viral illness that just the virus was overwhelming my body. I was exposed to mold over and over and over and over and over again. I had a
Wow.
mouthful of amalgam,
You were
all
a
the things.
mess.
Yeah, hot mess. Still am a
Yeah.
little bit in this far as I don't haven't had all the silver taken out because of the cost, because I had so much. So I'm
And
working
that'll
towards
kill you
some less.
alone. That right there will kill you just on its
Yep.
own, all by
Yep.
itself.
Yep. So I
Yeah.
have a plan. I have a friend who's a biological dentist, and we have a plan. At
So
least I know
before
it's
you do
there.
those,
Oh,
do
for
as
sure.
much
We do,
heavy
I
metal
do
detox.
binders. I have a whole removal program that
I'm gonna send you the information on the protocol that I do. And you might want to try it to see if that's something that you want to use in your practice too, because it is so gentle on the system and you don't have reactions at all with it. Sometimes with binders, you even have reactions because they're disrupting some stuff as it's drawing in.
yeah.
But it really is remarkable
Yeah.
how
Yeah, I would definitely be open to it. I have the dentist that I use, he uses binders, he gives them to you. He has
oh,
stuff in
that's awesome.
and the very first thing he showed me was a meridian chart with my teeth and the emotions, and that's what we
I
talked
love that.
about first. And he's amazing. Scott Chandler, he's in Park City, Utah. He's amazing.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, so he's very wise, very humble, loving
So
kid.
you mentioned that are you still vegetarian?
I mostly eat plant-based. So I've done everything. So the very first thing I did the person who introduced me to functional medicine, because I was doing holistic, but not functional, he's
Mhm.
like, no, I need you to stop eating this and this and this and this, and I want you to start eating meat. And I had tried eating meat in the past, and I'm blood type A. Meat and I don't like each other very much. I just had to increase my hydrochloric acid. That's what I have to do.
I was
Otherwise,
going to say your digestion would be,
yeah. So I just have
especially being
to,
vegetarian for so long, it's really hard on your body to incorporate meat if you don't have enough
yep.
HCl.
So you just have to take each hydrochloric acid and betaine and some digestive enzymes. And so I did AIP for a while,
Uh-huh.
and mostly did okay with that. I didn't realize until a few months into it that I had just moved into a building in the hospital that was riddled with mold, and I couldn't figure out
Oh,
why I was not feeling well. And I'm very mold sensitive, so it was a little bit of
that
a
was my husband.
confounder.
That's what I think we figured out later on,
Yeah,
because when we moved out of our apartment when we first got married, we were only there got married in May, we moved out in March, but the wall behind so we were on a first floor. And so we had these big drapes in the bedroom that we hardly ever open because it's our bedroom. I don't want people to see our bedroom.
yeah,
And there was an air conditioning unit in the wall that went outside.
yeah.
Well, and my husband was totally disabled. Our church was amazing at that time. They came and moved our whole house when I was on a business trip.
Wow.
They moved us from the apartment to the house. I walked in and I cried. I still get
Wow.
teary when I think about it
Oh,
because they
bless.
knew we had a need and they came and the pastors, not like some Joe Blow that they hired, the pastors came and they moved all of our stuff. And there was a lawn chair in our living room. I'm like, okay, I knew right away what happened.
Yeah.
But I'm like, the lawn chair, and it's because my husband was doing laundry and didn't realize that they just cleaned us out and moved. But when I was, and they left cleaning supplies, just the most thoughtful, like all of the cleaning supplies that I had were still there. And so I'm out there cleaning the apartment after they had moved us into the house. And I pulled back the drape because I wanted to make sure I dusted the AC. The wall was black with mold.
Oh, wow.
And it was 29 years ago that this happened.
Wow.
We just hit our 29th anniversary in May. So and that's why I think I got sick on the honeymoon, is because we had moved in. I was exposed to that mold. It caused me to be
Sure.
weaker. Then
Yeah.
going to Mexico on a fishing trip for a honeymoon, being exposed to other stuff, having a lot of fish
Yeah.
when
Yep.
we were there.
Yep.
And then coming back and, my lifestyle with being here and there and everywhere, I wasn't in the house that much. And he was right near the AC. So
Yeah.
now we know, but we had no clue back then. Like
Yeah.
it dawned on me when people started talking about mold. I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder he almost died. He went from 175 pounds, super strong. Like if you looked at him now, you couldn't imagine him being 175. He weighs 180, 185, and he's 61. He's still in good shape. He has some health issues, but I can't make him do anything. So when it comes to that mold being a big deal, and you don't
Yes.
know, like
Yes.
we had no clue. We never
Yes.
opened the drapes.
Yes. That's why I almost in with my bioenergetic testing, the bioresonance testing,
Yeah.
I test for all that. And then
Yeah.
if they're still not sure, some folks they or just take it for what it is, and we just develop treatment plan around that. It's not the end all be all. So I definitely have like
But it's never one thing. It's
right.
never one thing.
And if they want more proof, I'll just order a mold test, mycotox, a urine mold test, and organic acid. I'll do like I said, I'll sometimes I can see the parasites and or they don't believe me and I'm like, okay, well then let's do a parasite test,
Do you
but it's
ever
never
have,
one thing. It's always peeling back the layers. It's always addressing the easy stuff first. I would say easy things that are the most apparent first, and then just like peeling the layers of the onion. And sometimes I'll have people say, why does it look worse now than it did then? And I'm like, well, how do you feel? First of all, you're feeling better. So it's not just a piece of
we're
paper, a
disrupting
test.
things.
Yeah.
We're being disruptive.
And we're moving the biofilm,
Yeah.
and a biofilm in the gut, like things hide underneath it. Now you can see them. They were playing hide and seek. Now you can see them. Now it's good. It's good because now we know.
Yeah.
So
One thing that I find really interesting is mold can be one of those tricky things. Like, where is the mold? Is it in your workplace? Is it
it's
in your house? Is it where in your house? And I had someone recently, I thought it was just such a great piece of information. I had called Vibrant America, who I do labs through,
I love
and I had a question about, I think it was the oat or the myco, I think it was oat and mycotoxin question. And she said, you know what, don't bother with a lot of those mold tests that are in the house or having someone come and check the house. Take Petri dishes and put them in different places for a certain amount of time and then put a lid on it and, have it analyzed. If you see mold, that's where the mold is.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so much
A
cheaper than
lot of
having
times it's
someone
in the
come
wall.
out.
And
Yeah.
unless you disrupt it, okay, so I'll give a really good personal example. I was thinking about buying a small office building. It had been a dentist office. It was perfect. It had two exam rooms. It had one office and a little waiting room and a closet. It was great. But he
Uh-huh.
used to make dentures. So lots and lots and lots of water, dentist and water, water, water. I walked in, I was like, oh my gosh, there's mold. And I could nobody there couldn't see it like at that point just walking in the front door, and I could feel it, and I could just sense it. The realtor was nice, and we looked around and we looked in the back underneath that, and I'm like, there's mold. I could tell there's mold. So there, and she's like, okay, well, I'll see if maybe the owner wants to do a mold test. So they just did an air test and it was negative. And I'm like, because you can't just put a piece of paper out. And
Yeah.
an environment, if the flora, the spores aren't in the air, or if they're behind the walls, you're never going to get a perfect positive air
Well,
test.
and you're not going to have a perfect place where there is not any mold at all.
Right. Yeah.
But like, and you sensing that, in our house in Waco. It was, it needed some improvement, shall we say. If it was on Fixer Upper, then it needed improvements.
Yeah.
And every time I was in the laundry room, if I was in there for very long, which that was our kitchen when we first moved in, when we were totally demoed the kitchen and was in that process, having that rebuilt, had a nice long counter. It had a sink in there, the whole thing that you need. And there was a fridge in there too, which was awesome. The mold, there was some stuff going on in that fridge, but every time I was there, in that space, I'm like, there is mold in this space.
Yeah.
But I knew we didn't have the money to replace, take the cabinets out, break open the walls and all of that kind of stuff. We got flooded.
Oh.
And it was because of a heavy rain.
Yeah.
So it wasn't any like a pipe bursting. It came through the weep holes. They had weep holes at the very bottom of the walls. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. You do that up a little bit higher, you're still getting the air circulation. And
Yeah.
if you're in an area where you could get flooded, that's
Yeah.
not cool. So it flooded in there, and it flooded through the living room and a little tiny bit in the front bedroom. It was just a little bit. We kept it all at bay. Like, God was amazing timing. Like, timing was spectacular. And they pulled out the cabinet in that laundry room. The wall was black behind the cabinet because there had been a water leak that was constant there that no one had ever taken care of.
Yeah.
So it was covered under our insurance
Yeah.
to break all of that stuff out and take it out.
That's
I'm
amazing.
sure they didn't do it in the correct way, but after we did that, I was like, I can work in here now.
Yeah.
Not that I love working in the laundry room, but
Yeah. No, I love that because
you sense something is wrong, you pay attention to that.
Yes.
Like, people
Yes.
say, I think something's wrong. Pay attention to it. That's a big deal.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole point is there's usually mold where you cannot see it and can't even smell it. And air tests don't do it justice. You have to have the right kind. I use two companies. One is called Safe at Home, and he's mostly upper East Coast. And then the other is, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank.
I'll have to get that information from you later.
Yeah, he has people all over the place. And he's amazing. He also measures things like EMF, like what in the house, and he does a whole house evaluation. Ryan
I love that.
Ryan is his first name. I could see his face, and I'm thinking of a friend of Ryan who it's not the right last name, so I'm not going to say anything. But yeah, I love him, and he knows how to test appropriately. So sometimes you just like the traditional, and even I was in a really sick when I moved to New Jersey and was working in a practice there for a while. The upstairs apartment started leaking in the bathroom into mine, and it had been going on for a while because when they opened it up, there was mold in the ceiling, and I got sick. But they, the insurance company just brought in whoever they paid for.
Regular contractors to take care of it. They're not doing the
And they
whole
totally didn't do it the right way. I couldn't even be in my apartment for like, I just had to go for a drive because I couldn't, the chemicals, and I knew it wasn't. And so I just moved out. I just told the guy I need to break my lease because I'm sick because of this apartment. So he was very kind and gracious. But I guess the point is the contracted treatment companies aren't all equal either. So you have to have somebody who knows what they're doing and knows how to handle your situation. So, and then knows, like, I have a very specific way that products that I use to detox mold, really effective. And sometimes you feel a little bit worse before you feel better because you're getting rid of stuff. And that's where supporting the lymphatic drainage and liver, the detox pathways, making sure you're upregulating methylation so that you have the energy and ability to detox. It's all really important, and supporting the cells. So yeah.
I love that we have such a common mindset.
Yeah, very,
I
very.
love you, Teresa.
I love you too, Kari. So what's one last thought you want to leave for all of our watchers today and the listeners today?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, probably what I just said. If you think there's something wrong, pay attention to it. Doctors may say your labs are fine and that your body's working normally and you're not feeling right. There's something wrong. And there's nothing bad about taking control of your health. And that's one of the things I think both of us do really well is we empower our people that we're working with to evaluate their own situation and take control of their health. You can control a lot more of your health than you can imagine.
Yeah.
And that's what I've learned with going through it myself. So think something's wrong, do something about it, and you have a lot more power than you think you probably have.
Yeah. I love that once you teach somebody how to do it, it's sort of like you can feed a man by giving him fish, but if you teach him how to fish, then you fed him for a lifetime, you know. It sort of is the same way. I was just evaluating like, you know, certain people that I haven't seen for a while, but they're better and they know what to do. I've taught them how to do that. And so they don't need to see me as often. And so it's not a reflection on did I do a bad job? It's probably a reflection on I did the right thing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's a good reminder because I was feeling kind of like, this in the last couple of days, like, man, I haven't seen certain people in a while. And I think that's because they know how to do, I've taught them what to do. So, and I taught them where to get what they need. And so, you know, once you've empowered somebody, there's one of the people that I follow in the functional medicine space, you know, his mission, one of his missions is to have the patient become the doctor, where they're taking the onus is on the person to be empowered. We are, as providers, are empowered to teach them, and then they're empowered to do something for themselves, you know, so that they're not victimized by what they're experiencing. So
Yeah,
they're not
absolutely.
dependent on us, which is where I think Western medicine has fallen short. We've created this sense of dependency on a diagnosis and on that relationship, but that's not healthy. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Wow.
Well,
So
I'm
good
looking
talking
forward
with
to
you
seeing you
today,
next
my friend.
week.
I'm so happy to have this time and I'm excited to see you next week. So,
You too.
all right.
Have an amazing day, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
You too.